And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the NewsHour tonight, North Carolina enters the political spotlight as former President Trump and Vice
This NewsHour has been provided by
at Kettering.org.
the Judy and Peter Bloom Kovler Foundation, upholding freedom by strengthening democracies at home and abroad. And with the ongoing support of these institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the NewsHour. The top issue for many voters, the economy, took center stage today as former President Donald Trump returned to campaign in a battleground state.
His North Carolina rally followed a scattershot news conference at his Mar-a-Lago estate and a meandering conversation with Elon Musk on X in just the last week. Laura Barone-Lopez has our look tonight at the latest.
Donald Trump back on the campaign trail, trying to get back on message. The former president rallied in a battleground state for the first time in a week and a half.
Kamala Harris won't end the economic crisis. She will only make it worse.
In Asheville, North Carolina this afternoon, he talked about the economy, one of the top issues for voters, and he slammed his opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, for her economic record.
If Harris wins this election, the result will be a Kamala economic crash, a 1929-style depression. 1929. When I win the election, we will immediately begin a brand new Trump economic boom. It'll be a boom. We're going to turn this country around so fast.
Notable after the economy today got a bit of good news. Inflation falling below 3% for the first time since 2021. But it wasn't all economy, as Trump repeated his list of grievances. Trump was joined at the rally by far-right Republican candidate for governor Mark Robinson, who has previously sparked controversy for his comments on religion, LGBTQ rights, and civil rights. Today, he stuck to the economic theme.
What we see here with the weaponization of government, it does not jive with being able to have a good economy.
Robinson's presence, alongside Trump's recent attacks on Harris, has some Republicans warning the party could alienate voters.
What Donald Trump needs to do is go out there and campaign every single day, telling the American people exactly what Kamala Harris has said.
Former candidate Nikki Haley and others have criticized Trump for veering away from the issues.
The campaign is not going to win talking about crowd sizes. It's not going to win talking about what race Kamala Harris is. It's not going to win talking about whether she's dumb. It's not, you can't win on those things.
Those GOP alarm bells come as Harris is gaining momentum, not only in North Carolina, but in every battleground state but one, according to the Cook Political Report. Only Nevada shows a Trump lead. Harris is even tied in Georgia. And in the days leading up to the Democratic National Convention, the Harris Walls ticket close the enthusiasm gap. Excitement amongst Democrats and independents for the Harris versus Trump contest has jumped double digits since June, when President Joe Biden was still in the race.
Being president is about who you fight for, and she's fighting for people like you.
Looking to keep the momentum going, the Harris campaign today announced a $90 million ad buy that will flood the airwaves after the party convention next week. Also, prominent Republicans, including former elected officials and party leaders, even actor Mark Hamill, held a Republicans for Harris Zoom to rally support. Organizers said more than 70,000 people joined the call.
Kamala Harris now is standing here in Michigan asking us for a promotion. I think it's time to say to Kamala Harris, no thank you, you are fired.
And both running mates were on the trail. In Michigan, Republican VP nominee J.D. Vance confronted criticisms that Trump has been distracted.
I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to run the campaign that he wants to run. And look, if you listen to what Donald J. Trump says, if you look at what I say, we are prosecuting the case against Kamala Harris on policy.
While Tim Walz, Harris's VP pick, headlines fundraisers in both Denver and Boston. Harris herself was off the trail, but plans to lay out her own economic message later this week. Just like former President Trump, also in North Carolina. And for the former president, the specter of his legal battles still clouds his election calendar. The Manhattan judge who convicted Trump said today that he will not step aside from the case. And for now, Trump's sentencing is still set for September 18th, just a week after the first presidential debate with Vice President Harris. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Laura Barone-Lopez.
I'm Vanessa Ruiz. Hostile scan detected. Navigational data received. Product received. Product received.
Good evening, I'm Amna Nawaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the News Hour tonight, just full-scale
In
north toward Bermuda. Expectations are growing. A special envoy for the Biden administration. We start the day's other headlines in the Middle East. The U.S. says it remains committed to talks to end the fighting in Gaza ahead of negotiations planned for tomorrow in Qatar. That comes after a top Hamas official said the group was losing faith in the U.S. to mediate a ceasefire. It's unclear if Hamas will indeed attend the talks in Doha. Meantime, in Gaza, health officials say Israeli airstrikes killed at least 17 people. While in Beirut, a special envoy for the Biden administration met with Lebanese officials and emphasized the need for a ceasefire in Gaza.
There's no more time to waste, and there's no more valid excuses from any party for any further delay. The deal would also help enable a diplomatic resolution here in Lebanon, and that would prevent an outbreak of a wider war.
Concerns about a broader conflict were only heightened by the death last month of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in an explosion in Tehran. Iran has blamed Israel and has vowed to retaliate. The Taliban marked the third anniversary of its return to power in Afghanistan today. That included a military parade at the Bagram Air Base, once the center of the American-led war. Some of the military hardware on display, such as Humvees and tanks, were left behind during the evacuation of U.S. and NATO-led forces back in 2021. Taliban leaders praised their own achievements, but made no mention of the hardships faced by the population there. Some Afghans in Kabul addressed those challenges.
There's no work in our country, and many people are unemployed, so they are forced to migrate to Iran and Pakistan. If there are good job opportunities, no one will want to leave.
Aid groups say millions of Afghans are on the brink of hunger and starvation following decades of conflict. The World Health Organization has declared Mpox outbreaks in Africa a global health emergency. Formerly known as monkeypox, the virus is transmitted through close contact and can cause painful lesions all over the body. The WHO says there have been more than 14,000 cases in Africa so far this year, the vast majority of them in Congo. Scientists are concerned that a new version of the disease may spread more easily. The WHO Director General said today that outbreaks could become a global threat.
Today, the emergency committee met and advised me that, in its view, the situation constitutes a public health emergency of international concern. It's clear that a coordinated international response is essential to stop these outbreaks and save lives.
Western countries have been able to control the spread of Mpox with vaccines and treatments, but those have not been readily available in Africa. The Atlantic storm known as Ernesto has strengthened into a Category 1 hurricane after it pounded the northeastern Caribbean. In Puerto Rico, floodwaters consumed entire streets. Power lines toppled, tangled in knots. Roughly 700,000 people in more than 20 hospitals were without power today. Ernesto turned away from the Caribbean today and is expected to intensify as it crosses open waters heading north toward Bermuda. Expectations are growing that the U.S. Federal Reserve will cut interest rates at its meeting next month after the latest sign that inflation is cooling. Data from the U.S. Labor Department today shows that consumer prices rose just 2.9% in July compared to the same month last year. That's the first time inflation dipped below 3% since 2021. President Biden seized on the cooling prices when asked about inflation at the White House today.
Has the U.S. beat inflation, Mr. President?
Yes. I told you we're going to have a soft landing. We're going to have a soft landing. My policies are working. Start writing that way, okay?
Inflation consistently ranks as a top concern for voters. It's come down significantly from a peak above 9% in 2022. That inflation news helped drive some modest gains on Wall Street today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added 240 points to close just above the 40,000-point level. The NASDAQ added about 5 points, so virtually flat. The S&P 500 ended higher for a fifth straight session. Still to come on the News Hour, why Baltimore has been hit especially hard by drug overdoses. New reporting details the perilous journey migrants are making across the land bridge between North and South America. And NASA weighs its options for bringing 2 stranded astronauts back home.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
In year 3 of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Kyiv has, over the last week, flipped the script on Moscow with an audacious incursion into southern Russia, catching Moscow by surprise and sowing chaos.
Today, Ukraine said it had blasted its way deeper into the Kursk region of Russia, where it has captured dozens of towns and settlements and taken Russians prisoner. And the governor of the neighboring Belgorod region declared a state of emergency. It is the largest cross-border attack since Russia's full-scale invasion and the largest presence of foreign troops in Russia since World War II. Here's Nick Schifrin.
For nearly 2.5 years, Ukraine has struggled on defense. Today, it's on offense. For the past week, Ukrainian soldiers have thrown aside Russian President Vladimir Putin's claim the war wouldn't touch Russia. They've trampled through more than 70 Russian villages, raising Ukrainian flags over small-town administrative buildings and changing Russian spellings into Ukrainian. The incursion has reached about 18 miles into Russia, what Ukraine says is about 390 square miles. Ukrainian soldiers show off their operation with video, selfies, playing, and driving heavy metal. They advance through territory thinly defended, but there's been a fight. Ukrainians pulled the flags off Russian soldiers' helmets they just killed by the side of the road. And Russian soldiers have been captured and driven back into Ukraine, what President Volodymyr Zelensky calls an exchange fund.
We have proven once again that we, Ukrainians, are capable of achieving our goals in any situation, capable of defending our interests and our independence.
Ukraine says this is not an occupation, but its soldiers posted videos in control of a gas facility, even picking up provisions from a Russian grocery store. None of this territory is particularly important militarily, but the image of Ukrainian soldiers patrolling Russian villages, many emptied after the evacuation of 75,000 residents, is a shock to Russians and a boost to Ukrainian pride and this state TV reporter. In Moscow, Putin hosted a public forum this week with governors and cut off the Kursk governor as he detailed the size of Ukraine's incursion.
Alexei, the military will report to us what the width and depth are there. You tell us about the socioeconomic situation and report on assistance to people.
To try and evict Ukrainian soldiers from Russia, U.S. and Ukrainian officials confirm that Russia has redeployed some soldiers from inside Ukraine to aid the defense. But Ukraine had its own redeployment. U.S. officials confirm at least some of the soldiers who crossed the border into Russia left the Pokrovsk region, where they were fending off heavy Russian attacks. Ukraine is also trying to bring the fight into Russia with long-range drones. Today, Ukraine said it had launched its largest drone strike yet deep into Russia. One target was this Russian airbase before and after the strike. To discuss the incursion into Kursk and the overall state of the war, we turn to Michael Kaufman, Senior Fellow in the Russia and Eurasia Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, a think tank in Washington, D.C. Michael Kaufman, thanks very much. Welcome back to the NewsHour. What significance does this incursion have, do you believe, on the wider war?
Nick, it's a very significant development, and it's already significantly lifted the morale of Ukrainian troops and changed the prevailing narrative, which is that the war has been on a negative trajectory. But we're still fairly on into the Ukrainian operation. This incursion has been going on for over a week, and it's clearly a fairly sizable operation in terms of the forces that the Ukrainian military has committed, and they met with initial success and were able to break through Russian forces early on when they entered Kursk.
So we'll go into the military details of what's happening in Kursk, but let me just ask strategically also, what's the political impact on President Putin himself or the overall narrative that comes out of the Kremlin?
Well, obviously the incursion into Kursk, with Ukrainian forces now being on Russian territory, is deeply embarrassing for the Kremlin. And even though the Russian military is still continuing to try to advance across the front line in Ukraine, Kursk now is front and center stage. And it's, of course, going to change the external perceptions of many of the other countries looking at this war. I think Russian leadership was trying to portray a huge degree of confidence prior to the Ukrainian offensive, thinking that there was essentially maybe no way they could lose. But this has the potential to really change potentially their perspectives and those of others.
So zooming back into Kursk, why do you believe the Ukrainians have had some success? Why was this area apparently so thinly defended?
So it's clear that the Russian leadership didn't anticipate an attack across the border into their own territory. The Ukrainian military first encountered border guards who were surprised and Russian conscripts who weren't well prepared or equipped to fight them. And after the initial breakthrough, they had, to some extent, the run of the place for the first couple of days. The Russian military has taken a long time to deploy reserves to the area, and typically Russian military does not do well in a very dynamic situation.
So what are the Russian military reserves who are there trying to do? Presumably stop the Ukrainians, but Putin will have to evict these Ukrainians. How difficult will that be?
Well, first, it's still not clear what the goal of the Ukrainian military operation is. I think they hope that the Russian military will divert a lot of their forces from their current offensives in Ukraine in order to try to counter this incursion. So far, the Russian military has pulled some forces from the front line in Ukraine. Unfortunately, it's not the areas where they were conducting offensives. Those are still ongoing. Now, the Ukrainian advance has slowed down significantly after the first couple of days, although it is still making progress. The Russian military is trying to counter it and trying to stabilize the front. They still have not been able to do that. The Ukrainian military is pouring more forces into this operation and taking more troops off of the front lines in Ukraine in order to try to push and expand the scene in the Kursk region.
On the flip side, as I reported earlier, Ukraine itself decided to redeploy some of its troops from Ukraine, including around the Pokrovsk area, where it's fighting quite pitched battles with Russia, move them into Russia. Is there any risk to Ukraine's effort inside its own country?
So there is a risk. An operation like this actually comes with significant risk of overextension. The Ukrainian military took some of its better troops, thinned out its defensive lines in Donetsk, other parts of the country, in order to conduct this operation. Ukraine does not have a substantial advantage in reserves or manpower. Now there's an upshot, and it's clear that they can achieve some significant gains potentially, but there's also significant downside and risk. With thinned out lines, the Russian military is making advances towards Pokrovsk and other parts of Ukraine, and a lot depends on what happens both in Kursk and in the coming days with Russian force deployment. So if the Russian military is able to stabilize this offensive without having to pull a substantial amount of forces from their operations in the rest of Ukraine, then this offensive might end up being a lot less successful than initially hoped for. It still remains to be seen.
A U.S. official confirms to me that Ukraine is using American weapon systems inside of Russia. How significant is that?
So it's good Ukraine is operating Western equipment, Western vehicles, and has even been conducting HIMARS strikes inside the Kursk region against Russian reserves. And it seems to have basically a degree of tacit acceptance, if not support, from Western countries to do that. I think it's a notable development since Ukraine has been for a long time pushing for a change in policy and a greater tolerance and essentially greater freedom to be able to employ Western equipment and Western capabilities, not just in defense of its own territory, but in being able to take the fight to Russia.
And finally, Michael Kaufman, I mentioned before what Ukraine called its largest long-range drone strike into Russia, hitting 4 Russian airfields. How significant are these long-range drone strikes that Ukraine is able to do now that it wasn't able to do at the beginning of the war?
It's a notable development because Russia's had that advantage in long-range strike capability attacking Ukrainian infrastructure for the better part of this war. But over the past year, Ukraine has significantly increased its production of long-range strike drones, has been concentrating them in these types of strikes, and is showing that actually it may now hold the advantage, not in overall strike capabilities, certainly not compared to the number of cruise missiles the Russian military can fire, but compared to the number of drones that the Russian forces use. Ukraine is starting to steadily overtake them in the size of overall strikes and is only set to expand those types of attacks in Russia, essentially retaliating and having a degree of ability to inflict damage on Russian air bases or Russian infrastructure.
Michael Kaufman, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
Good evening. I'm Amna Navaz.
And I'm
They made a statue of us and put it on a mountaintop. Now tourists come and stare at us, blow bubbles with their gums, take photographs of fun. They'll name a city after us and later say it's all our fault. Then they'll give us a talking to. Then they'll give us a talking to. 'Cause they've got years of experience. Living in a den of thieves, rummaging for answers in the pages. Living in a den of thieves, and it's contagious, and it's contagious, and it's contagious, and it's contagious. We wear our scarves just like the news, but not 'cause we want eternal sleep. And though our hearts are slightly used, new ones are slave labor you can keep. Den of thieves, rummaging for answers in the pages.
Here we go again. It's nacho night with a side of gas and diarrhea.
Sound familiar? Any of these digestive issues after eating may cause you to second-guess your food choices and could mean you have exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. But Creon can help manage EPI. Creon is a prescription medicine used to treat EPI by replenishing enzymes, so the body can break down food and absorb its nutrients.
You had me at hello.
With Creon, I can manage my EPI.
Creon may increase your chance of fibrosing colonopathy, a rare bowel disorder. Tell your doctor if you are allergic to pork, have gout, kidney problems, or worsening of painful swollen joints. Do not chew capsules as this may cause mouth irritation. These are not all the side effects of Creon.
Nothing can come between us.
Savor everyday moments. Don't wait to ask your doctor if Creon is right for you. Learn how AbbVie can help you save on Creon.
Say when.
One.